Hello everyone, Justin here, and welcome to the first part in my series of Game of Thrones reviews. I know I'm really late on this. I know I'm really late on this. But before I get into that, I just uploaded a brand new Multi-Prometheus 1 video. It's my first in-character Multi-Prometheus 1 video in a while. It's not the Justice League one that was promised because, like I mentioned, a video or two ago, unless I didn't and my memory's screwing with me. I'm just having a lot of trouble getting the script for that Justice League one right. Plus, I'm working on so many other things right now that outside of this silly little YouTube channel, that I ended up writing a new script for a completely different Multi-Prometheus 1 video. And that's the one, that one I completed earlier today, and I uploaded it to the channel. So it's on there right now if you want to see it. It's a really fun one. What I'm talking about is pretty fun. But what we're talking about here right now is Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones has been out for a while. I mean, they're getting ready to put out their 8th season early next year, and that will be the final season. But I am just now starting to watch the series for the first time. And I just finished season 1. And so I'm going to do like a out-of-character review for every season of Game of Thrones as I'm going through the series, eventually ending with season 8 when it comes out, and then that'll be the whole series. Now, why did it take me so long to start watching Game of Thrones? It's been out forever. I mean, well, the reason for it's a couple. If you saw my Power Rangers video, you remember there was like a really long backstory to how I got to where I was with that particular franchise. And it's kind of the same way with Game of Thrones. There's a long backstory, not as long as the one with Power Rangers, but a little long. Essentially, when Game of Thrones was first starting to come out, and it was getting really popular, I was unable to watch it. I was living with my parents then, and they didn't have HBO. So I couldn't record it on TV or whatever. I couldn't watch it live because I was always too busy working on other stuff or sleeping. And I didn't pirate it because I have a personal philosophy against pirating things when I can avoid it. My only other option besides pirating was to spend hundreds of dollars on the DVDs and Blu-rays because, yeah, each DVD or Blu-ray of a Game of Thrones season is like $50. It's ridiculous. So I just didn't watch it because I couldn't. Well, fast forward several years to last Christmas. Season 7 had just recently come out on Blu-ray. And guess who, of all people, is a big fan of Game of Thrones and had been collecting all the Blu-rays for all 7 seasons so far? My grandmother. Out of all people, my grandmother, I find out when I'm coming home back to the United States for Christmas, out of all people, my grandmother is a big fan of Game of Thrones, and she was collecting all the Blu-rays, and she had just gone to the store that day and bought the new season 7 Blu-ray or whatever, and she now had the Blu-rays for all 7 seasons. And I'm shocked. I'm like, you watch Game of Thrones? Because I hadn't seen it, but I had heard how R-rated it was. So, she owned all 7 seasons on Blu-ray, and I noticed that all 7 seasons on Blu-ray came with those ultraviolet voodoo digital copies. And so I asked my grandma, hey, are you going to use these digital copies? And she said no, she has no intention of using them. And so I was like, do you mind if I take them? Because I've been very interested in watching this show ever since it first came out, and I haven't been able to. So would you mind if I take the digital copies? And she was like, yeah, sure, go ahead. So I suddenly had all 7 seasons of Game of Thrones on my Vudu account in HD for free, basically. And so, great, now I have the whole series. I can start watching it. Well, I only got a few episodes in. I think I stopped at like season 6 or something. I only got like not season 6, episode 6 of the first season. I only got like six episodes in before I went back to the Czech Republic to start the new semester at school. And as you know, Vudu doesn't work outside of the US. Now, everyone I talk to about this says, oh, you can just use a VPN. Well, I tried many different VPNs, quite a number of different VPNs, and none of them worked. Like, Vudu still doesn't work. Well, finally, a few weeks ago, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I finally found a VPN that actually unblocks Vudu in the Czech Republic. So I finally found a VPN that could unlock my Vudu account, which means I could finally, watch Game of Thrones again. And I mentioned that before I had to stop, and when I went back to the Czech Republic, I got to about episode 6 of the first season. Well, it had been a while since I'd seen it, and I just don't want to restart again in the middle of the first season. So I just watched those first 6 episodes again, and I've spent the last little while or so watching the first season. And so now I have seen the first season of Game of Thrones. There's going to be a spoiler section towards the end of this review. I know it's been out forever, but there's probably people like me who have just recently started watching the show and don't want things spoiled for them. So I'm going to save spoilers for the end of the video, and I'm going to give you ample warning. If I had to say one thing about Game of Thrones, based solely on the first season, I have never seen a show have so much story and so little story at the exact same time. Like, the first half of this first season, every single episode, when the credits roll and the episode's over, I feel like a million things happened and nothing happened at the exact same time. This show is really weird that way. Like, not much actually happens when you think about it, but it's done in a way to make you think like it was this big epic thing and so many things happened. And it does have a complex story. I mean, this fictional land of Westeros and all these different kingdoms, Winterfell, the Dothraki, all these different kingdoms and civilizations and stuff. I know the Dothraki aren't in Westeros. Calm down, nerds. It's all these different things. It does have an interesting lore, and it does have a complicated lore. But despite how complicated of a lore, relatively speaking, this show has, and how much backstory there is to everything, you still feel like not a lot happens in each episode. Until episode 6 or 7 or so of the first season. And the first season only has 10 episodes. Almost every season only has 10 episodes. So it's not until you get like most of the way through the season that things start like really picking up. But yeah, the main thing I have to say about the first season of Game of Thrones is I've never seen a show have so much story and so little story at the exact same time. Like, there's just little moments of lots of story sprinkled throughout. And those little moments of true, legit developments in the plot of the series have so much freaking story crammed into those little moments that this show has a ton of story and very little story at the exact same time. It's really weird. It's also done a lot like a soap opera. Not necessarily in terms of the corny writing or the melodramatic acting, because the writing is very good and the acting is very good. It's done like a soap opera in terms of story structure. Because with soap operas, and yes, I'm aware it's based on a series of books, The Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin. George R. R. Martin. I know that. But the story structure of the series is very much like a soap opera. No one character is central to the story. It covers different groups of people in different places, basically setting up things in a way to where they could go on forever. I know it's not, because the final season is coming out next year, and it's based on a series of books with a limited number of books. And the show does feel like it's building up to one specific thing. It's building up to the Long Winter and the White Walkers and everything. But it's the story structure and how it kind of meanders a little bit and doesn't really feel like there's one thing it's moving towards until you get most of the way through the first season is very much like a soap opera. I don't watch soap operas, but I'm familiar with the common traits of them. And that was the biggest thing I was worried about as I was watching this season. The biggest thing I was worried about was I'm 5 episodes in, and it doesn't really feel like things are moving to a specific goal. It just feels like things are kind of meandering and happening and stuff. I really hope this isn't one of those shows that always feels like it's building up to something huge, but then the huge thing never happens because they want to keep the show going. Based on what I've heard from other people, including, again, of all people, my grandmother, that is not the case. The show actually does get to that thing that you can feel like it's building up to. And the first season very much feels like a setup. Like, I remember watching the final scene of the season finale, and the credits rolled, and I had just finished the first season, and I was like, okay, that all felt like setup. I feel like things are actually going to happen in the second season. Not things are actually going to happen, but like things that we're working towards, things that we're building towards are actually going to start happening in the second season. Or it could not, and season 2 could be more setup for what happens in season 3. Or season 3 could be more setup for what happens in season 4. I just know it has to go somewhere eventually because they only have one more season before they're ending the show. So I know it has to eventually go somewhere. And I got 7 seasons, and then 8 once the final season comes out. In terms of the writing, I mentioned earlier that the writing is very good. And yes, the writing is very good. There's lots of lines, specific lines in this show that make me want to start quoting them in everyday life. Like there's a scene where 2 guys are talking, or 2 or 3 guys are talking, and this one character starts giving a compliment in a way where there's obviously going to be a but, blah, 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 blah at the end, and he's like, I very much respect you, and blah, 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 and then the guy interrupts him and is like, I once heard a man say, everything before the word but doesn't matter. And the guy just simply responds, but blah, 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 blah. And just the way the dialogue works in that moment is really good. And there's lots of moments like that throughout this first season. There's lots of little moments where the dialogue is so uniquely, cleverly written that I want to start quoting it in everyday life, but I'm afraid if I do, I'll just look like that guy who's constantly quoting Game of Thrones. But the dialogue is very, very well written in this. The acting is very good as well from everybody, even the kids. Like, child acting is usually terrible. Child acting is usually awful. As a director myself, I try to avoid working with children when I can, just because they're usually horrible. Like, their children are just normally bad actors. That's just how it works. But every once in a while, you come across something where the child acting is actually pretty good. And the child acting is actually pretty good in Game of Thrones. I was especially Maisie Williams, however you pronounce her first name. She plays Arya Stark, and she's very young, like somewhere in the 10 to 13 range, or at least her character is. And she's actually quite good for a child actor. I was really impressed. And then there's another child, Bran Stark, who is also a child actor, younger, and he's actually pretty decent too. So even the child acting is pretty good. Like, the acting overall from everybody is quite good. I especially like Sean Bean as Ned Stark, who's probably the closest thing this first season has to a main character. But he's not really the main character, but he's like the closest thing the show has. Sean Bean as Ned Stark is like one of my favorite acting performances of a character in a TV show that I've seen in a while. I mean, like, when you watch Sean Bean as Ned Stark in this series, you don't see Sean Bean, who's a very famous actor and has been in a ton of stuff. I mean, he was freaking Boromir in Lord of the Rings. But and I was worried I would just see nothing but Boromir in this show, but like no, his acting performance, his performance as Ned Stark in this is so good that I don't even think of Boromir when I'm watching this show. I see Ned Stark, and because he is probably the best actor in the show. The guy who plays King Robert is very, very good as well. I really believe that character as well. Even Joffrey, who is the one character everyone hates. And yeah, I kind of don't like him either because he's an a-hole. Even he, who is again a child actor, or at least a very, very, very young actor, does a pretty good job too. I mean, like all the acting in this show is very, very good. The writing is great, the acting is great, and the production value. Oh my goodness, this show has the best production value of any TV show I have seen in my entire life. I mean, every single shot in this show looks like a big budget Hollywood historical epic. It's just, now granted there's not much CGI, and there was a little bit of CGI at the end of the season finale, and it didn't really look that great. So I'm afraid if they start using a lot of CGI in later seasons, the production value is going to kind of go down. But in this first season, oh my goodness, every shot looks like a big budget Hollywood historical epic, and it's a TV show. I mean, it's just, we've gotten to the point where TV shows are getting almost as expensive as movies, and as expensive as movies in some circumstances, like Game of Thrones. I think I read the budget for this first season was $10 million. This show does not look like $10 million. Like, coming from a filmmaking experience myself, this show does not look like $10 million. This show looks much more expensive than that. So how they were able to take $10 million, which is relatively low, which is actually quite low in the world of filmmaking, and make it look that freaking amazing and huge, and give the show production value this huge, is really amazing. Production value is not the most important thing, of course, and if the story isn't there, the production value doesn't really all that matter that much. Cool visuals, cool sets, cool costumes without a good story are just cool visuals, cool sets, cool costumes, and there's nothing there. And the story, like I said, the story for the first half of the season at least doesn't really feel like it's going anywhere. It feels like they're trying to build this suspension tension between characters, but it's not really clicking. It's not really working all that well. It's not until episode 6 or 7 of this 10-episode series, so really late in things, that things actually start to click. I actually started going, okay, now I can see what they're doing. Like, the show didn't really feel like it had much of a direction the first half, the first 6 episodes or so, and I was really thinking to myself, like, where are they going with this? What are they trying to do with this? But it wasn't until episode 6 or 7, I think 7, that I was finally like, okay, now I can see where they're going with this. Now I can see what they're trying to do. And the fact that the show took that long to click may not be a problem in the overall scope of this 8-season series. Like, it may have needed to take that time to set everything up before things started going. But just looking at this season by itself as a 10-episode thing does kind of hurt. It probably won't hurt my perception of the show as a whole if it turns out this was just the necessary little bit of setup before things started happening, but it does kind of hurt my perception of this season by itself as a season, because it took so long for things to click and for me to go, okay, now I can see what they're trying to do. Now I can see that there's some sort of direction that things are going in. But once things do pick up, it actually does get quite entertaining. And the last 2 or 3 episodes of the season are actually quite entertaining. And I, after seeing the season finale and after finishing this first season, I'm really interested to see where the show goes from here. I don't rank things. I I know other YouTubers and other people online rank things on like a scale of 1 to 10 or a letter grading scale or whatever, or some out of something stars or whatever. I don't rank things, so it's kind of hard for me to quickly sum up how I feel about things. If I were to just basically sum up how I feel about this show, I would say it has a lot of potential. The way things have been set up in this first season, this show has the potential to be amazing. It's not amazing yet, but it has the potential to be amazing later on. Right now, with what I've seen so far, it's okay. The production value is amazing. The writing is quite good, but it's not amazing overall yet. But it has the potential to be. Right now, it's just kind of okay, and it's good enough to keep my attention. So I'm really interested to see where the show goes from here, to see if it gets to that, if it reaches its potential, if it gets to that point where it is amazing. So yeah, that's basically my review of Game of Thrones Season 1, spoiler free. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't seen the show yet and you're using this to like gauge whether or not you want to start watching it or whatever, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. And for those of you who have seen this first season of Game of Thrones, which is probably most of you, again, I'm very late to this. This is the spoiler section. Spoilers starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom. Ned Stark, Sean Bean, they killed him! Sean Bean died again! Like, I knew he was going to. I know he's not in the later seasons. I went in knowing he wasn't in the later seasons. So I knew he was gonna die. It was still frustrating when it happened, because I really liked that character. I really, really liked that character. I really hope that this show, King Robert, which was another character I liked, dead as well. An episode or two apart from each other. And I know Sean Bean dies in almost everything he's in, but I really hope this show doesn't turn into one of those, because I know a lot of people die in this show. Like, one of the most common jokes I've heard about this show, simply by word of mouth, is, so-and-so died. Unfortunately, I don't remember specifics, so I can, stay spoiler free or whatever, but I know a lot of people die in this show. So I really hope this doesn't turn into one of those I hope this show doesn't become like The Walking Dead, because one of the main reasons why I stopped watching The Walking Dead is because all the characters I liked would die and all the characters I didn't like would stay alive, and so it just became a show filled with characters I didn't like. That was one of the reasons why I stopped watching The Walking Dead. So I hope that doesn't happen with this show. Based on promotional stuff for the upcoming Season 8 that I've seen, it looks like Jon Snow's still alive, and it looks like Arya Stark's still alive. And those are two characters I really like, so hopefully that's the case. And nobody in the comments spoil things, please. Just please, no one in the comments spoil things. Just please, don't be a jerk. Two characters I liked died in this. One character I really don't like, which is complete brain fart. Not Tyrion Lannister, that's Peter Dinklage. The other Lannister, the one who was having sex with his sister. Again, I was surprised my grandmother was watching this show. That's something I forgot to mention in the spoiler-free section. This show is very R-rated. There's a lot of sex, a lot of nudity, a lot of graphic violence. This show's very R-rated. It is. But, oops, forgot to mention that in the spoiler-free section. That Lannister, complete and total brain fart. I remember most of the characters' names, but just that one guy, complete and total brain fart. But him, I really don't like, and as is the show's intention, you're not supposed to like him, and it looks like he's about to die. Then again, the show may pull a fast one on us and not kill him off. Uh, so yeah, the whole deaths thing with this show. The biggest thing I can say about the deaths is just I really hope this show doesn't become like The Walking Dead, where all the characters you like die and all the characters you don't like live, and it just becomes a show filled with characters you don't like. Um, and then at the end, when Amelia Clark's character, Daenerys Targaryen, the Khaleesi, she survives the burning at the pyre, and she rises up with these dragons, these little baby dragons. And dragons haven't been around for thousands of years, and they've been saying that all throughout the season. So like when all of a sudden these dragon eggs that she was given in the first episode that were basically relics, actually hatch, and she's got these dragons now. Like, it's a really big deal, and I remember watching that going, whoa. So, yeah, the reveal of the dragons was really awesome. Um, uh, yeah, that's all that's coming to mind in terms of spoilers right now. Right now, everyone's in a different place. Ned Stark's dead. Joffrey is king. Um, Arya Stark is on her way to the Wall, where where her bastard brother Jon Snow is. Jon Snow is at the Wall, getting ready to go beyond the Wall with all the other knights, men of the Night's Watch, to go fight the White Walkers. And yeah, everyone's kind of Sansa is still engaged to Joffrey, so still at King's Landing. So yeah, everyone's kind of in a different place. Everyone's split up. It's kind of like the ending to the first Lord of the Rings movie. Everyone's split up. Everyone's going their own separate way, and hopefully they all get reunited at some point. Yeah, that's pretty much all I can think of in terms of spoilers. So yeah, that's my spoiler section. Thank you all so much for watching. This is just the first in my series of Game of Thrones reviews. I'm going to be doing reviews season by season. You can look forward to another one of these whenever I end up finishing season 2, and so on and so forth. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't seen my brand new in-character Multi-Prometheus 1 video, make sure you go check that out. It's a much shorter one than usual, only 15 minutes. And yeah, like, subscribe, insert cliche YouTuber stuff here. Bye.